Greetings, everyone. Here we are with another delightful video. But this is not on Tabletop Gaming with Wolffoetowtech. This is on Tabletop Wisdom. Tabletop Wisdom is this fun little channel that me and John have. John has did a lot of work on it. Let's give him his due. He's thrown together a lot of stuff, and he's even produced a long list. He's even produced a list of things for me to double check over. So, first and foremost, what is Tabletop Wisdom all about? If you came over from my channel, I gave you a very quick explanation of what Tabletop Wisdom is all about. But that was before I recorded that video, before I even really knew what John had on his list of topics. So, boom. Here we go. Welcome to Tabletop Wisdom, learning how to play D&D and etc. and other tabletop role-playing game systems. First and foremost, we will start largely with Dungeons & Dragons 2014 and 2024. We will cover the changes between the two editions. We will start with the most basic stuff for Dungeon Masters to get a hold of. The skill spectrum on this channel should range from level 1 to level 20. So we'll have a series of videos that basically teach you the essential skills of a Dungeon Master very early on, so you can do all the essential basics for your party of players. But also, as we continue forward, we will teach you how to modify and change those mechanics through the intermediate stages of skills to all the way to the advanced level end of the skills, way over here, which would be literally just bullshitting monsters into existence. And understanding the rules and mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons 2014 and 2024 to a high enough level that you could literally just this is a party of level 8s or level 15 players, characters. This is their rough level of skill. This is the kind of monster you could just throw together on the fly, check over for its stats, and basically, yes, this monster will be a challenge for the party to play against. Or utilize spells and mechanics in the system to homebrew entirely new systems in itself. So you'll have the whole range of skills for the Dungeon Master. As for player side of the game, go from Dungeon Master to the player. We will have a series of videos that will cover for all the essential mechanics of player characters, best starting classes for new players, best spells for new players to a class, what kind of items or features that each class has that works really well for new players, some stumbling blocks that occur here and there with certain classes for players, our personal belief on which class is best for new players, which ones are best. Me and John might have disagreements on that, but hey, that's the fun of having two people doing a channel, is that one person could create a list of all the what they think is the best spells for a new player, for a wizard, and another person can make another list that's for best spells. They can talk over why each spell is really good for that first level wizard, for a new wizard player. But they could also basically bring up different facets of why they think this spell is better than that one, or so forth. So there you go. There will be very importantly, other side topics that come up sometimes in the tabletop gaming community. People get into a little bit of drama here and there, or people get seriously confused about a mechanic. We will try to produce videos covering those topics to the best of our ability to help work your way through, debates about politics and tabletop gaming, and what you should do in the case of rules rules as intended versus rules as written versus rule of cool, and so much more. So there we got the general gist. Now, how did I get started into tabletop gaming? First and foremost, that is actually a weirdly complex question for me because I actually kind of got started into it by broken phases in my life. When I was really young, back in the late 80s and early 90s, my early exposure to Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role playing games was the magazines in the stores, the cartoon, occasionally coming across books and reading them, and so forth. I generally, at that point, early on, enjoyed the lore of Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role playing games. I enjoyed the idea of them. I enjoyed a lot of different facets of them, except for the fact that I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere where there was very few people around, and there was not really an opportunity to sit down, put together a group to play Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop role-playing games. So, and I was so busy on the farm, I was picking tomatoes, baling hay, dealing with chickens and cattle. I was the oldest son, so I was generally very busy as an individual, so I could not reliably be at any games. If I could find a D&D game when I was young, I had the problem of in the spring and fall I was completely busy and had no way of knowing if I ever had an opportunity to go to a game. In the dead middle of summer, I was still very busy, but there was still more reliable openings. And then winter was the one period of time, if I did try to actually go hunting for a tabletop gaming group, I literally only had 3 or 4 months to play, and that wouldn't work out very well. So basically what happened is that I went through a good chunk of my young life being really interested by Dungeons and Dragons. I play a lot of video games. As you can see up here, I have collections of video games. So that was my substitute for tabletop role-playing games when I was young. So there's that. And as I got older, the farm kind of went to a side. And at some point, I moved away from the farm. My grandpa sold the farm. I no longer had to work on the farm. I got an apartment. And at that point, I had the freedom to find a D&D group and learn how to play D&D, and I basically jumped into it, and I played as much D&D as I could, and I tried to get into as many different tabletop role-playing games as I could. Once I got an apartment and I got established outside of the farm, I was really tied up with the farm when I was really young, so there was that, and the fact that I was the oldest child, and that's your main duty as the oldest child, is to be the first one in line to take care of, help with the cattle, or help with the baling, and help with the corn, help with the picking of the corn, and help with picking tomatoes, and help with planting peppers and tomatoes, and help with watermelons, and dealing with chickens. When I was in my teens, I basically had 5 jobs. I worked at a horse ranch. I worked on the family farm for my grandpa. My dad had a vegetable business that I basically helped him with. I raised chickens, which was my own little thing, and then I helped my brother Josh with his rabbits and his other little side businesses. And that's probably not even the end of it. I think I even helped another horse ranch at some point later on down the line. And then I also worked in lawn care, simultaneously overlapping with a whole bunch of these. So I had anywhere from 5, I had anywhere between no less than 3 jobs to 7 jobs. And they all paid terribly. And I was a doofus, and I spent most of my money on video games at that time. So there you go. What are my campaigns like? I'd like to fuse a whole lot of different things into my campaigns. I always try to focus on having a social element to the campaigns, a exploration element, as well as a action slash combat element to my games. I personally like to experiment with different concepts, and I like to pick up new skills from other dungeon masters that I know in our groups and sprinkle those in, see if I can like upgrade them or modify them to fit my style more. I try to fuse classic Dungeons and Dragons into mechanics. So like I will take stuff from older editions of Dungeons and Dragons and integrate it into newer editions myself. Or I will adopt stuff from other tabletop role-playing games and try to work that into Dungeons and Dragons. I also run Call of Cthulhu as well. So there's that. My favorite role, DM or player. And what is my favorite parts about tabletop role-playing games as a player and a DM? My favorite part about tabletop role-playing as a player or DM, I actually like both. When it comes to the DM side, I like to invent stuff and play off of what the characters are trying to do. Sometimes people will start. I'm in that fun category of Dungeon Master, where if a player starts talking about stuff, I will actually encourage them to invent new things for the world, and I'll write it down and try to incorporate it later on in the game as it's flowing. I do not pressure my players to write a backstory. If they want to write a backstory, they can do so. I advise that they should make it short and make it in a bullet point bullet point style. That way I can easily pick out the key pieces of it and then work it in as I need be, adjusting as I go along. So I'm not super heavy on focusing on players' backstories, but I do try to work that stuff in as I can, as it would naturally feel in the campaign setting. Sometimes it works out very well, sometimes it doesn't, and that's the thing. Some players are really tied to their backstories, and some players are really loose with them. So it's all a learning experience. Whether I prefer being my favorite role as a player or DM, yeah, that's a hard set of questions because I'm in that gray zone person where I enjoy both being players and DM. And what is my favorite for aspects of them? It's a broad range. Favorite character types. I like to play a mixture of goofy but also serious characters. This is actually a Pandora's box question for me, as I actually have a extremely broad range of character types I like to play into. I'm a what could be defined as a high role player, where I basically get into the character and I make the character complex. They can have a lot of contrasting or highly compatible traits with themselves. So this is a really hard question because it changes from character to character. I like to do alliteration. I like to do puns and names. I like to do all kinds of stuff. I have some characters that have really short names. I have some characters that have ridiculously long names. This is a messy situation right here around that question because I just do all kinds of stuff. Point 6 is narrative versus tactical versus improv. As I said before earlier on, I do very much like to have a lot of social interaction. There's a deep lore and history in any of my tabletop, in any of my campaign settings or adventures. However, there's also opportunity for players to be tactical, both in social skills as well as combat tactics. And I do allow for an extremely high level of improv. I am noteworthy for my habit of making adventures where I have a defined beginning point and a starting area for all the players to play around in, sort of a sandbox. And then I have this floating melange or amalgam zone of ever morphing range of possibilities in the center, where depending on how the players want to play it, whether they want to play it more socially or more offensively, or they want to like sidetrack to something else on the side, I kind of just adapt my stuff as it goes along. Sometimes either just quantum ogring the situation where I switch something over from one path to another, or I literally just invent something entirely new for that situation because the players really want to do something else entirely different, which goes into the improv category. What makes my style unique? I absorb as much knowledge as possible as a dungeon master and as a player. I try to create the world as rich and as dense as possible, however, only giving the players what they are most interested in. If players are not at all interested in the history of the kingdom, I don't bother giving them that. I do have it on the side. I memorize a large portion of my stuff. However, I also don't make it overly complex as it goes along. It's important to keep it loose enough that if a player does something or if a player suggests something, that you can easily addendum that into that style. And I make it very friendly to home brewing on the fly for both me and the players, because sometimes players show up with a mixture of character concepts, and sometimes you just have to morph that around on what they're doing. So why are we starting this channel? As I stated earlier in the very beginning of the video, this channel is largely a teaching channel for new to intermediate and to even to advanced dungeon masters, as well as beginning to intermediate and to advanced players. And this is going to largely cover a lot of different topics. What makes my perspective unique? I largely am a big fan of collecting a lot of different stuff, a lot of different knowledge, a lot of different skills. So I oftentimes I'm in that ADHD autism spectrum situation where I sort of have this compulsion to, when I get into something and I feel like I can go into it, I basically just dive straight into it. I subscribe to all the YouTube channels on the topic. I literally make a YouTube channel just for the topic. So I have a science channel, I have a math channel, I have a language channel, I have facts channels, I have movies and books channels, I have all kinds of channels that I made over the years. And some of them I did not post stuff on, and some of them I do post stuff on. And oftentimes I use those channels as a means of organizing different topics. So I could literally subscribe to over 500 science channels or 500 tabletop role-playing game channels. And whenever I want to deep dive into topics in that field, I just go to that channel. I watch tons of videos. I collect all kinds of books on the topics. As you can see from my tabletop gaming channel, if you go there, I have tons and tons of books on tabletop role-playing gaming content. But as I was saying, I'm also a bit of a collector of all kinds of stuff. I collect a variety of books and topics that even extend outside of, say, like tabletop role-playing games. And the thing that makes my perspective unique is that I enjoy learning from other systems and patterns and people. And I like to mix and experiment as I go along in a very fluid fashion. So I got a lot of fun in that. And I also like learning history in itself. So that I collect like the original Dungeons and Dragons and Star Frontiers from TSR, and numerous other things. So there you go. That is my perspective on it. So, and that's what I bring unique to the Tabletop Wisdom channel, is that I've spent a lot of time researching a lot of different topics, and collecting an extremely broad range of products from the history of tabletop role-playing games, as well as many other things, just a standard kind of thing. And I bring that to the games, and I bring that to the channel as well. I'm quite sure that John has a nice long list of what he brings that's unique to the channel. Please note that I recently looked at his video that he uploaded to the channel, and it's only like, I think, 10 or 11 minutes. And this is probably going to be the shortest video of this on this for this channel I make, or I tried to make. This is like the 6th recording, and every time I made a recording trying to make it for the Tabletop Wisdom channel, I personally made it like an hour long, half an hour long, an hour and a half long, stuff like that. John is more concise to his points. He is more organized. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting seeing how this works out. So thank you very much for watching, and have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time yet again.